It gives me great pleasure now to bring on board Dr. Fereidun Fesharaki. He is the founder and chairman of FGE. Dr. Fesharaki's work is well recognized in the world of energy. His views on oil are very well respected, and he's someone who's been making a case when crude was at $100 plus in the previous cycle that oil prices or crude prices will not sustain. But guess what? Crude prices are now threatening to go past $100. Are they here to stay? Or this is just geopolitical tensions which are leading to a spike in crude? Let's discuss all that and much more with the man himself who has made many predictions and the world really respects him for his view. Dr. Fesharaki, what a pleasure to have you back on ET Now. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Fesharaki, it's been an extraordinary spike in crude. The spike in Jan, the follow-up in December, in Feb, and the surge in December. Do you think crude prices are getting too hot and these levels are unlikely to sustain?
Well, there are three factors that they need to separate from each other. What is the fundamentals? What is the issue of the fundamentals of the market? The second is geopolitical tensions. And the third is whether there will be a deal with Iran or not. These three are the ones which will determine the level of price. If you look at fundamentals alone, the price should be somewhere in the range of $80, $85 by itself. Why? Because already we are in February 2022, and the demand is already back to 2019 levels. So we already have resolve the demand issue. So the only thing which remains for us to resolve is the supply issue. And the supply issue is in the hands of OPEC+. And OPEC+ have been slowly putting volumes in the market over the past few months, and they intend to do it. But they are facing problems among their own members that they cannot hit the capacity that they want. Every month, OPEC Plus says, I put in 400,000 barrels per day. The reality is that something like about 50, 60% of that is put in the market. So additional volume are not coming in because people just don't have the capacity. Only the Saudis and Abu Dhabi have capacity. Everybody else is almost tapped out. So this is the fundamentals are very strong. The geopolitics relating to tensions with Russia, tensions potentially with the conflict with Iran, probably account for $3 to $5 of the price, but is not bringing the price to these levels. What bring the price are the more fundamentals. Now, if we don't have a deal with Iran in the next 3 weeks, the prices will be well ahead of $100 a barrel because the OPEC capacity is not there. OPEC doesn't have enough capacity to continue the 400,000 barrels per day. And sometimes by September of 2022, we know that they're going to be running out of capacity, giving a cushion of 2 million barrels per day capacity, which is market needs for comfort. That level can be reached by September. So without Iranian crude, we have a disastrous environment in front of us between now and 2025.
Dr. Fesharaki, the fact that US now is an exporter of crude, how does this change equation from the previous time when crude prices were $100 versus now?
Well, the issue is not the supply, the issue is the demand. The demand is too high. The demand came back very furiously and much more than everybody expected. People were talking by end of 22, maybe end of 23, the demand will come back. Some big companies like British Petroleum had forecasted that 2019 was going to be the peak year, that we're never going to go above that level. That has all proven to be wrong, that the demand has come back furiously and the supply simply is not there. We don't have enough. And the investments which are taking place in the supply side are becoming less and less because of the green movement pressure. The green movement says, don't invest in the oil and gas business. We want to get rid of it. So they impact the supply side, but they have no power to impact the demand side. So if we have less and less supply, then we're going to have higher and higher prices. There is no two ways about it.
Dr. Fesharaki, at what point in time do you think alternates will start taking over? I distinctly remember we had this chat and you said if crude prices go higher, fracking will come in, alternates will start coming in. The world now has really figured out how to rely more on solar power and EVs and other alternate sources of fuel. Could that take over soon if crude prices remain stubbornly above $100?
No, no way. They become more and more important, but the big impact is going to be the impact of the electric vehicles, EVs, on the gasoline market. And that's the 2030s impact, it's not the 2020s impact. And the solar is coming in, but solar is not impacting the oil market. Solar is impacting coal market and natural gas because it's in the power sector. You can't put solar in the cars and drive them right now because the EV systems and infrastructure is not in place. So alternatives will come in, but impact more the power sector than the automotive sector. So for the automotive sector, between now and end of 2020s, early 2030s, we only have one serious option, and that serious option is gasoline. There is no other serious option.
So, to your mind, Dr. Fesharaki, then what is the new normal for the crude? What is the range in which crude will settle?
I think the new normal would be somewhere between $70 to $80 a barrel after 2025. Before 2025, the new normal is somewhere in the range of $85 to $95 a barrel. The question really is very dramatically what happens in negotiations with Iran. If the Iranian deal is made, and it has to be made in the next 3 weeks, the prices could take a dip of $5, $10 a barrel. And they go back to the mid 80s or low 80s, and then gradually start climbing again. If there is no deal with Iran, the prices would immediately hit $100 a barrel and then start climbing from that level. The OPEC countries, they don't worry about demand destruction anymore. They used to worry if the prices go high, the demand is destroyed. But they see that the demand is going to be destroyed by alternatives anyway. So why would I have to worry about it right now? Let me collect as much money as possible. And I can't do very much about it anyway. It's not in the hands of the OPEC countries to bring the price of oil down anymore. It is driven by demand. Too much demand and not enough investments in the supply.
So do you think the whole concept of greenflation is actually a worry, and world will have to live through high energy cost in its ambition to become more green, something which clearly seems to be backfiring now?
Yes, absolutely correct. First, many governments, and that includes the Indian government, seen an exaggerated view of the green movement. It is going to come, but it's much, much slower than people think. And while there are great ambitions in India for going to green hydrogen, for example, the costs are going to be huge. The oil business is very profitable business. And this is the first time that I remember in decades that the price of oil is high, the refining margins are high, the price of gas is high, all of them at the same time. For the oil complex, this is among the best times and the most profitable periods they've ever had in their history.
Dr. Fesharaki, what are the chances that the optimism on oil demand could hunker down? Because right now there is an unusual demand surge because world is normalizing post-COVID. But even if the world goes back to, let's say, pre-COVID level, all is well and COVID is a forgotten history. Somewhere, don't you think oil should ideally settle before where it was in the pre-COVID range?
No, I don't think so. We forecast that from 2022 to 2032, the demand for oil will grow by 10 million barrels per day. And then stop. A stop in 2032 to 33, gasoline demand worldwide will stop. Gasoline demand growth in Asia will not stop until 2040s. But worldwide, gasoline demand will stop and growth will stop, and there will be a slow decline. Diesel demand will peak in 2033, 34, and then will go sideways and drop slowly. But things like naphtha for petrochemicals continue to grow. bunker demand continues to grow, LPG continues to grow, ethane continues to grow. So many sectors continue to grow. The part of it which is under attack is really transportation fuels. And that would mean that the transportation fuel growth will slow down and then will become peak and start declining. But the decline is going to be very slow. There will be no collapse in the business, not for many, many years, not for until 2050 or longer. So these carbon neutral targets in 2050 are all pie in the sky. Nobody can do it. It's all political statements. So we are now lost in the political statements because people believe that the political statements are the reality, but they are not. They cannot reach to the carbon neutral world by 2050. I'm absolutely sure of it.
Dr. Fesharaki, now Ukraine is a crucial hub when it comes to crude transportation. It transported about 12 MMT of crude in 2021. What happens if Russia invades Ukraine? What do you think will happen? We've spoken about Iran, but let's look at both the scenarios. A, if Russia invades Ukraine, or B, the invasion is averted.
Well, Ukraine is much more important for gas than for crude. So the gas pipelines are critical in Ukraine. Oil is not so important. Oil is a fungible fuel, so it doesn't matter. It goes from one corner. Let's say that if they cannot export to Europe, they would export more to China, and China would import less from the US. So the impact on the oil market is going to be far less severe than the impact on the gas markets. Gas markets between Europe and Asia are interlinked. The spot price of gas in Europe ought to be $2 lower than the spot price in Asia. That is a structural relationship between them. In the recent past, European prices have been higher than the Asian prices because of the Russians are not supplying enough volume, and also because the Europeans have gone for the carbon tax and put a high carbon tax, make the price of gas more expensive. So the European issue is now driving the Asian market. And in Asia, a majority of the purchases of gas are linked to long-term contracts, oil indexed. If you take a look at India, I think 90% of the imports are oil indexed. So they're not impacted by the high gas prices. But those in India who decided to buy on the spot basis, because in April of 2020, the spot price of gas was $2 a million BTU, very low. They thought that it stays too low. They did not sign long-term contracts. They pay the price today. In Europe, everything is on a short-term market. There is no long-term contracts in Europe. So the Europeans are now paying very high. I'm in London now, for my house and my office here. The cost of electricity has doubled in the past few months and may double again. So the gas prices are really, really high. And the role of Russia and Ukraine in that is critical.
So, Dr. Fesharaki, energy prices have been unusually high. Can the world afford an energy shock?
Well, high oil prices are very bad for the world economy. So in a period of cheap money and high growth, probably an energy shock can be tolerated. If you start raising the interest rates and tighten the economy and the economic growth rate slows down, then the energy shock impact would be great. But in the world of cheap money, I think that $100 oil is tolerable. See, we detect no evidence right now that these high oil prices at mid-90s have had an impact on demand at all. Not yet. We don't see any evidence of it yet. Demand is still the same.
If I may draw your thoughts to the aviation demand, the fact that for the first time after a gap of nearly 12 to 18 months, airlines would be resuming their normal flight. Holiday season in US will start in next 2 to 3 months, the summer season or driving season. So are we looking at perhaps even further normalization and uptick in demand rather than what everybody is anticipating?
But if we look at 2019 demand versus now, aviation fuel is still far lower than 2019, but other fuels, gasoline and diesel, are already higher than 2019. So when I told you that the demand is already higher than 2019, I mean the aggregate number is bigger. But we think that for aviation, it takes until 24 or 25 before it normalizes. And the problem is all in Asia. Japan is totally closed. China is totally closed internationally. Domestically, they're open. Korea is totally closed. So you have some of these key markets are totally closed. So there is no flights taking place. If I want to fly to Singapore today, I cannot go through Japan. I have to go to San Francisco and go from San Francisco directly into Singapore. So the aviation fuel has not yet really come back, has made a big recovery, but it's still far lower than the normal levels until Asia opens. And Asia is very, very slow to opening. And particularly the Japanese, even today, Japanese citizens who want to go to Japan have to do 7 days quarantine at a government designated facility. So nobody wants to travel anywhere. And they have killed the aviation business in Japan.
Dr. Fesharaki, the fact that China is slowing down, could that be the swing factor in the oil demand?
China is not slowing down. China's demand is very strong, very, very strong. And even the aviation sector in China is back to 40% because all domestic flights are operational. It's the international portion. International aviation is the one which is in the problem. But we don't see gasoline or diesel demand in China slowing down. They're still very strong.
Dr. Fesharaki, what is in store for India then? I mean, at $100 per barrel, for an oil importing country like India, the macro will be challenging, inflation will be high.
Yes, indeed, it will be. No doubt about it that for countries like India, the high oil prices is a very bad development, particularly at this point in time where recovery is now sort of in the process. But India is one part of the world, so there is nothing anybody can do. It is not a matter of the OPEC countries making the price of oil high. It's just that there is not enough capacity. And they simply don't have enough volume to bring in. You have to have a deal with Iran and Venezuela. This is, I think, important story which I want to emphasize, that Iran and Venezuela are two important OPEC countries and two founding members of OPEC. You cannot keep sanctions against them forever and stop them from coming to the market. If you do that, then you have to pay the price of the economic turmoil for the global market.
What is your gut call, Dr. Fesharaki? You understand geopolitics and oil very well. Do you think more than anything else, compulsions may force countries like America to come up with, to lift out any kind of sanctions on both Venezuela and Iran?
Well, the difference between Iran and Venezuela is that in Venezuela, the government, previous government of Mr. Chavez and the current government of Mr. Maduro, they have destroyed the oil and gas industry. They have destroyed it. So even if they are tomorrow resign and they put together a very friendly government oil and gas business, it's going to take 5 years before they get back to the previous levels. So Venezuela today exports 400,000 or 500,000 barrels per day. If the sanctions are removed, maybe they can improve it to 800,000, a million barrels per day, but that's it. But in the case of Iran, it's different. The system is ready to go. If the sanctions are removed, Iranians can reach their maximum capacity in between 90 to 120 days. So very immediate impact is going to be made. So I think the US is ready to make the concessions to Iran. The question is that what does Iran want to do? On the one hand, in Iran, there is a body of opinion pushing on the supreme leader that don't negotiate, build a bomb first and then negotiate. Israelis say that if you do that, then I'm going to bomb your nuclear facilities. I'm not going to wait for you to complete the building of a bomb. And then Israelis attack Iran, then it has to bring the US in. So it's a disaster scenario of creating a major conflict in the Middle East. Price of oil could go to $200 or more at that level. So I'm hoping that that scenario will not be followed. It is more than 50% likely, but I don't say 70 or 80%, only 50% likely, that a deal will be struck in the next 2-3 weeks. And that would open the taps of the Iranian crude coming to market by the second half of 2022.
Dr. Fesharaki, oil market at the end of the day is also a market where low liquidity and low leverage rates have had an impact because the world can leverage at such low interest rates. If interest rates move higher, what are the chances that the excess speculation which is there in the oil market, and it's not a function of demand and supply, those parameters may not change, but the speculation in the oil market could also start unwinding because if cost of capital goes higher, leveraging would be difficult?
We cannot exaggerate this impact very much. It's like a horse which is riding. You can ride the horse which is already riding and make the horse go faster. But if the horse is asleep, you cannot get it to get up and ride. The point is that all this speculation only works when the market is very hot and the market is already going up. It can make it go up faster, yes. But how much? $2, $3, it's $5 maximum. The fundamentals are the ones who are driving the market. If the fundamentals are not there, speculators have no power. So we cannot give too much credit to the speculators as being the force behind the increase in the prices. They are only the ones which can accentuate something and make it go faster, but they cannot create the problem by themselves.
So if I wrap up today's fantastic interaction with your thoughts, which are that you think that oil prices will remain higher, and you will not be surprised that if oil spends considerable amount of time in 2022 above $100 per barrel.
No, I would not be surprised at all. Again, it all depends on the deal with Iran or not. If there is no deal with Iran, it could be easily $100 or more. So we have a supply side issue here because the demand is very strong. We have seen no weakness in demand despite the higher prices. Obviously, the ability to pay is high, and the market is eager to get back to normal and is willing to pay the higher prices.
Well, Dr. Fesharaki, an absolute pleasure and a rarity to have you on ET Now. Certainly hope to see much more of you going forward.
Thank you very much. Very nice to talk to you.